Is an India-China war inevitable? War clouds over Ladakh. Desperate after Pangong Lake debacle, Chinese build up troops at the line of actual control. Is the time for diplomacy over? Or will India-China talks in Moscow melt the ice? War clouds on the India-China border. That's our top focus on India First.
War clouds on the India-China border, especially after India's extremely deft maneuvers both south of the Pangong Lake, which has put India in commanding heights overlooking the Moldo garrison of the Chinese, and also moves that are by and large not very well known. India is also in a commanding position north of Pangong Lake, and that's something that's making the Chinese very uncomfortable, also very desperate. They've made several desperate moves to try and either retake some of the peaks or occupy some of the other unheld peaks. But what does this mean on ground, especially when shots were fired after a gap of 45 years? Does this mean all bets are off? None of those agreements are active anymore. This India Today special broadcast comes to you from the Indian Air Force station at Ambala. In less than 12 hours from now, the Rafale Omni-Role fighter jets will formally be inducted into the Indian Air Force. The first 5 of the 36 Rafales. The French Defense Minister has flown into India. He's leading a very big delegation of French Air Force personnel and government personnel and industry. The Defense Minister will be here. The Chief of the Air Staff will be here tomorrow morning when those aircraft are inducted, and will they prove to be a game changer at the line of actual control? I'm Gaurav Sawant. Let's get started. The situation along the line of actual control in Ladakh is extremely grim. Remember, once shots were fired, all bets are off. India's ramped up deployment along the line of actual control, especially in areas where the Chinese are trying to dislodge Indian forces. They've made some attempts, but India read out the right act. India has also very clearly drawn the red line. Now, barbed wires have now been placed in some areas, and the Chinese have been told. So the brigadier level talks are happening, and in these brigadier level talks, India has made one thing very clear to the Chinese. If they try and cross the barbed wire, then all those protocols in the past may not be followed, and India will fire for effect. That's what sources are telling India today. Remember, last time it's the Chinese, we are told, they opened fire, then tried to blame India. I quickly want to cut across to Leh and bring in India Today's Abhishek Bhalla, who joins us with more on the story. Abhishek, bring us the inside details of what transpired in the conversation between the brigade commanders on ground.
Gaurav, this is a big signal from the Indian Army. They have set up these temporary obstacles, and this has been communicated to the Chinese army that the final frontier shall not be crossed. And if they attempt to do so, then they should be ready for all the repercussions. And why this is significant is because the Chinese PLA had been making multiple attempts to dislodge the Indian troops who are occupying some of these heights. And this has been irking the Chinese, because from here, Indian Army can have a very close look to all Chinese military installations, military bases in the area. And in the last few days, what sources have told us is that the Indian Army is not just occupying important heights on the southern bank, but also in the Finger area. And that's the reason why that yesterday, the Chinese army actually was seen enhancing their deployment. A lot of Chinese activity was noticed by the Indian troops, and this has been communicated in the brigadier level talks
Abhishek,
to the
stay
Chinese
with me.
that
Let's
this is
take
the
this
red line.
Forward, and China's desperation. Yes, India's red lines are very clear. If China attempts to cross the red line, there will be consequences. What explains China's desperation at this point of time on ground zero? Has China been outwitted? Has China been outsmarted? And is that desperation an indicator that China may try and up the ante? Are war clouds now looming large over Ladakh or all across the line of actual control? China has put out a number of propaganda videos of firepower demonstrations, of rockets being fired, of artillery being fired, of armor being moved. What does all of this indicate? Does China now want to up the ante, occupy unheld peaks, or try to make an ingress and hold some Indian territory before snows in October and mid-November? Remember, even the 1962 war happened in October and November. Abhishek Bhalla with our top story tonight.
After China's failure to dislodge Indian troops from the commanding heights of Rechinla and Rezangla overlooking the Moldo garrison, China released a propaganda video of artillery and rocket assault exercises in Tibet. Chinese state mouthpieces claimed the firepower demonstration had been carried out at an altitude of over 15,000 feet. China has steadily built up forces in the area south of Pangong Lake after being surprised and outmaneuvered by the Indian Army on the night of August 29th and 30th.
While retreating, the Chinese troops, for the first time in 45 years, fired shots in the air to frighten the Indian troops. At a time when the talks are on to de-escalate the situation, the Chinese troops are creating another friction point south of Pangong Lake.
Having lost face thrice at the LAC, once at the Galwan standoff, the second time south of Pangong Lake, and finally with the Indian Army establishing pickets close to Finger 4, an increasingly frustrated China may resort to desperate measures to regain initiative at the line of actual control. And this may include either attempting to occupy unheld features at the LAC or a deep ingress across the LAC, which may result in armed clashes. With winters coming in, the window for opportunity for China to act is closing. In 1962, Chinese soldiers, after talking of Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai, had attacked India in October 1962 and retreated within a month by mid-November.
China's PLA has had a policy of creeping into territory on the line of actual control of all over India, which is controlled by India and claimed by India. So the position in Ladakh has become very serious. But India has taken the heights which command some of these passes, which is called the Chushul Bowl, and it actually threatens a part of the road which goes from Tibet to Xinjiang.
Amidst the spiraling tensions, Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar will interact with his Chinese counterpart, Foreign Minister Wang Yi, on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting in Moscow. Will talks bring peace or be used by China to further strengthen its defenses at the line of actual control remains to be seen. But India clearly is taking no chances at the LAC. Bureau Report, India Today.
India just cannot afford to take chances with a country that indulges in deceit at the line of actual control. Joining me now on the broadcast is Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hasnain, Air Vice Marshal Arjun Subramaniam, and Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar. Three men who understand China and Chinese deceit very well. General Hasnain, in your appreciation, given what's happening on ground zero at this point of time, is a war with China inevitable, and is it likely to be between October and November this year?
Gaurav, thank you for having me on this show, and an interesting analogy that we are getting involved in. From my side, I would say China's ego has been hugely compromised. A superpower in the making, which is looking at 2035 and 2049. In the year 2020 is being vested on a major border with a major country. Obviously, ego is hugely hurt, and therefore some restoration of that ego will be one of the objectives and aims. But I don't think nations in today's world go to war or go to conventional war on this basis. They go on the basis of certain political objectives, certain military objectives. So to my mind, at the moment, I do not see such political objectives or military objectives for China, given the force levels that they have concentrated in Ladakh and other places. However, I foresee a potential of skirmishes, a potential to restore the situation at the places where they perceive that we have come into their territory, and anything tactical, a little more operational, but not as strategic as something like going to war in this period up to November. Also, the international situation with the presidential election in the United States slated for the 3rd of November, I think the situation itself is waiting and uncertain. China may not want to involve itself in it.
Okay. Many analysts, Air Vice Marshal Subramaniam, have been seeing a similarity between 1962, the situation then, and situation now. The uncertainty in the international arena, the situation at Galwan, China wanting to prove a point so that India gets that point for the next 50 years and so on. In your appreciation, in 62, we did not use combat air power. Does Rafale and the other fighter jets in India's inventory and the will to demonstrate use of air power in Ladakh like we've seen of late or in Arunachal Pradesh send a message, sir? Is this a game changer in 2020?
Thanks, Gaurav. And before that, I just wanted to slightly offer you a different analogy. I would believe that the current situation on the line of actual control is very much like the situation that was existed on the 10th of September 1967 across Nathula. And I think after that, I don't think India and China have ever been closer to a skirmish, as General Hasnain has mentioned, as it is today. Now coming to, because if you recollect, on 10th September 1967, there was a scuffle across the wire at Nathula. The Chinese quietly went back to about 300 to 500 meters and opened up a fierce barrage of artillery and MMG fire the next day. And the Indians responded even more fiercely over the next 2 days. And then the action shifted to Chola Pass 2 weeks later. I see great similarities to that situation today, because if we were to, if the balloon were to go up, it would be a Nathula kind of a skirmish with the Chinese trying to open up another small front in order to see whether the Indians are alert. Now, moving on to air power. Now, I know the Rafale is being formally inducted tomorrow. And as I have maintained all along, let's not please overhype this issue of the Rafale being a game changer. Let me assure you that the other aircraft in the inventory of the Indian Air Force are as well equipped and as well prepared to sort of support several localized skirmishes across probably the Ladakh sector and even parts of the Arunachal sector. And air power, yes, is going to be a game changer if India decides to use it decisively and in the manner that air power is used best, and that is offensive.
What an interesting point you make, sir. If India decides to use air power and the manner in which air power is used best in an offensive role. And air warriors, and a large number of them are watching this broadcast here at Ambala, I've been told. Ambassador Sajanhar, it is said war happens or conflict happens when diplomacy fails. That logic may hold true with multiple countries, but not with countries like either Pakistan or China, because here, even before diplomacy is given a chance, their army is acting and transgressing the line of actual control. So is the role for diplomacy now shrinking when Foreign Minister Jaishankar travels to Moscow tomorrow and interacts with Wang Yi? Do we expect something, sir?
Well, if our past experience over the last few months is to suggest something, the trust between the two countries is at an all-time low. And what we've seen is that when talks are going on, rather than both the sides sort of waiting for the talks to end and for some results to come out, the Chinese side has always been intruding in an aggressive manner into our territory. So I think there is, whether it was, on the 5th of June when decision was taken between the corps commanders to disengage. After that, we saw what happened in Galwan. Then on the 5th of July, when our NSA spoke to his counterpart, then after that, we saw that China had come, amassed troops and equipment, and occupied the heights from Finger 4 to 8, and also occupied the Depsang Valley, Depsang Plains. So China says something and does something entirely different. So I think what we've been saying is that we would like to give diplomacy a chance and have conversation tomorrow between Wang Yi and Dr. Jaishankar. But I think we should continue to maintain our readiness to the fullest, not thinking that if there is some sort of an agreement, even that agreement is going to be honored. I would like to use here, the phrase that Mike Pompeo had used for China, distrust but verify. So, I think that distrust has to continue, and even after that, verification of whatever they are saying, whether they are going to act by it, abide by it. But I think today, when Dr. Jaishankar speaks there,
so does that
then
mean
we are in a stronger position because we are commanding the heights on the south bank of Pangong Lake. Gaurav.
Is that a game changer, if I may? And we're using this word very frequently these days, General Hasnain, the fact that we are on south bank of Pangong So, overlooking the Moldo garrison, the fact that the special forces and the Special Frontier Force went on a commanding height even above Finger 4, and that perhaps must have indicated to China that India's out of the reactionary mode, is in proactive mode. The fact that weapons have now been discharged after 45 years at the line of actual control, does that put China also on the defensive, or does that make China even more belligerent? If you go by all those propaganda videos, what do you make of their psychological warfare, information warfare, and their warfare on ground, sir?
See, Gaurav, no doubt, your deduction that this is a game changer. And I agree with the Air Vice Marshal Subramaniam when he says that in the case of the Indian Air Force, the Rafale itself is not the game changer because they've got tremendous other equipment. But here is a tactical situation and tactical operation situation which has been created by securing these heights which are well inside our own territory, and which we had not done all this while because of the degree of imbalance which could have been created because we did not have sufficient forces on ground, and perhaps our overall readiness for war was not certain at that time. But today we are in a far better position, overlooking the garrison, the Spangur Gap, the area through which the mechanized forces can make an entry in the Chushul Bowl. All this area is well under observation, which means observed artillery fire can be brought in. Also, proper direction to the aircraft can be brought to bear in case necessary. The Chinese will be forced now, if they have to involve themselves in a skirmish, to try and evict us from these heights. There are now 9 days have gone past, 10 days almost. In 10 days, an infantry battalion of the Indian Army knows how to entrench itself, especially under emergent conditions. Therefore, to say that the Chinese will be looking for quid pro quo kind of options in other areas is unlikely. It is here that they will try and hit their heads. Therefore, because it is making a difference to their overall capability there. And that's why it's definitely a game changer.
There's breaking news that's coming in from Ladakh, and Abhishek Bhalla now joins me with more breaking news that's coming in and late night developments taking place, more information filtering in. The latest that we now get to you is that corps commanders will once again interact in Jammu, in Ladakh. It's now clear. So far, the conversation was at the level of the brigade commanders, and there have been multiple rounds. Remember, there have been 5 rounds of corps commanders talks, and then this maneuver by the Indian Army to occupy very crucial, tactically important but strategically very significant peaks south of Pangong So, also north of Pangong So. What we are now being told is once again the corps commanders will interact. Air Vice Marshal Subramaniam, if you were to think like a Red Land commander, would the Chinese use this as an excuse to build up and then hit us, or will the Chinese now realize that unlike 1962, India may not hesitate in 2020 to use air power. And how would you respond to those who say that the Chinese have very superior rocket power? They could take out our VAs and VPs, our vital assets and vital points with rocket power, and that would perhaps put us on the back foot, sir.
Gaurav, very interesting question. Let me answer your second question first. What you have got to understand is that China, while it may be a belligerent adversary, I don't think it is an irresponsible adversary. And why do I say that? That if China were to use the entire might of its PLA rocket force against Indian installations, what you have to remember is that except for a few installations in Ladakh,
Okay.
So except for a few installations in Ladakh, all other military installations in India are located within populated territory. So a rocket assault by the PLA rocket force is likely to cause a great amount of collateral damage if they were to target a wide range of airfields and other systems of the Indian military. So I think the PLA will be pretty circumspect in unleashing the entire might of their PLA rocket force if they see that they are going to be engaged either in one or a few limited skirmishes along the line of actual control. Now, you asked me to put on the hat of a red line commander, and I'll do that.
Fair enough,
you
sir.
know, the PLA presently would be having a series of dilemmas exactly as the Indian military leadership would also be having. Now, for 25 years, if you as the military have been prepared for an eventuality to prove yourself, which is what the PLA has been undergoing during its modernization period over the last 25 years, I think the PLA sees that now it is ready to take on the mantle of Xi Jinping's vanguard in his thrust to become a global power. And this, it sees also as an opportunity to prove itself. Because if you look at China's four principal adversaries, Japan, Taiwan, Vietnam, and India.
Yes.
I think with Japan and Taiwan, since they have the umbrella of the United States, China would be very wary even to open a limited front because that would expand the front excessively. With the Vietnamese, they've had a bloody nose as recently as 1979 to 1985. Now, in the Chinese perception, there could have been a feeling before these recent set of tactical maneuvers by India that India would be the easiest opponent to validate whatever the PLA has been training for over the last few years. And I think the Indian moves over the last couple of days have upset that apple cart of the Chinese belief that the PLA can finally prove itself as the vanguard of Xi Jinping's coercive ability. So I think the Chinese have a serious dilemma.
Fair enough, that's a very important point you make. And they have a dilemma. So will the talks between Wang Yi and S. Jaishankar, Dr. Jaishankar, our Foreign Minister, Ambassador Sajjanhar, give us an indication of the times to come, or it may just be buying tactics? China would try to outmaneuver, outthink, and perhaps hit us elsewhere.
No, I definitely think meaning it's very difficult to predict inscrutable Chinese as they are in terms of what they are thinking or what they are likely to do. But just to speculate a little on this, we have the SCO summit happening next month, and where both Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping are going to be there. I think the two foreign ministers are definitely going to be speaking about the SCO summit and about the meeting between the two leaders. And, going to suggest that this is a matter we have spoken, we have tried to resolve. Let us also sort of, leave it to the leaders to have a go at it, so to say. And this would be sometime in October, and then at that time they would think that maybe some sort of a solution could be worked out. But in between, I have all the feeling,
And perhaps that's also the time that we need to be,
Yes, particularly
maximum alert.
careful
We need
about
to be
that.
alert in October. They attacked us in October in 1962. Yes,
Absolutely.
they attacked us in October 1962, went back in November 1962, just when the snows were setting in, and this is the time that the Indian Armed Forces would be on a state of highest alert. Gentlemen, as always, many thanks for joining me. That is all I have time for on the broadcast this evening, but we'll be back tomorrow morning at 8. We'll be reporting from the Air Force Station Ambala as the Rafales are formally inducted into the Air Force, along with other fighter jets. Remember, the Tejas will also be here and flying tomorrow. So you have the French aircraft and you have the indigenous aircraft Tejas and many others that we'll be talking about through the day. For the moment, many thanks for joining me.